I am John Douche, and I'm here to ask you a question. Is a man not entitled to like Bioshock 2? No, says the critics. It didn't innovate enough. No, says Ken Levine. I won't reference it. No, says the remaster. I'm going to keep crashing. I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose a video. A format where you would not fear the censor, where you would not be bound by petty standards, where the smart would not be constrained by the comments section. And by liking Bioshock 2, this video can be yours as well.
Hello, it's me, and hey, I'm underwater. Isn't that some cool theming? Boy, all that water really, makes you wanna tinkle, huh? I'm saying I need to take a piss. I hate my life. Bioshock released. A spiritual successor to System Shock 2, with the main difference being that it was about an underwater objectivist society's collapse due to the flaws of man, resulting in stuff like drug addicts and demon children protected by colossal papas. And System Shock 2 was about... I don't know, I haven't played it. I'm not a fuck... I don't think I need to tell you how good Bioshock is. I mean, the big daddies are PlayStation All-Stars, the highest praise a fictional character can receive. Isn't that right, Aloda?
Well, who, me?
How's Sackboy doing?
I don't know, talking about running? Well, let me check. You don't matter Fortnite people, what the fuck?
So anyway, Bioshock is one of my favorite games of all time. As a kid, I've always had an interest in ocean life, so let me tell you, I was already fully on board with this game as a concept. I could not have expected how intricate the story would be, though, and how much damn fun it was, honestly. Maybe except for the late game, but shh. And you would think that I would immediately knock out its sequels, right?
Wrong!
Instead, I just replayed one like 2 more times. But at last, I got around to its fabled sequel, and I think I liked it? You see, I've been conflicted for a bit now, and I really need to get my thoughts straight, which is why I'm calling them Big Mommies. This game was made by an entirely new branch of 2K at the time called 2K Marin. They were the ones tasked with porting the original game to PS3, and that port came out like a year later because third-party devs hated the PS3 as much as they hated themselves. And apparently, they also hated good box art. Jordan Thomas, designer of the level Fort Frolic.
Oh God, you sick fuck, let me out of there!
Came on board as creative director, which I was kind of shocked by that fact, given how so many people made it sound like no one from the first game was even involved. 2K gave them 2 years to make this game. Unlike Bioshock 1 and Infinite, which got 5 years, which is still strange to me. It's almost like a big and greedy publisher wanted to turn out a sequel to a popular game as quickly as possible, regardless of if it really needed a sequel. Yeah, kind of just pointing out the big but extremely obvious point here. Bioshock didn't need a sequel at all. The inherent concept of it is flawed in my opinion. Rapture was designed to its very core to be a commentary on objectivism and about the nature of choices in video games. It was a grand epic story about the flaws of man that ended with the casualties of said flaws getting to live a happy life. Where do you even go from there? Do you just do another grand epic story with huge commentary? Well, I mean, they could just have Ryan come back to life and reveal he was being resurrected by an accomplice in an ending cutscene. If nothing else, they can use that as a freebie for Bioshock Security Beach. The game starts with a new, but actually really old model of Big Daddy doing the Big Daddy things in 1958, only a year before the massive civil war would take place. Our little girl called Eleanor gets surrounded, so we do the rational thing and get brainwashed. Then a woman comes on screen saying that we are not the father and that we should kill ourselves. And just like any divorced father that lost custody of his kid, we do. Jesus, we're like Johnny Bottomside. We then wake up wet.
So wet.
Sobbing wet.
Which is technically a joke I could have made anywhere in this video, I'm realizing. We then do some sweet genetic altering heroin. And you know what? This video is getting too dirty. I'm gonna try to be more appropriate. So we then play with our big sister, and then our daughter starts living in our head rent-free, and then we're off to go save her from an unfair custody ruling, meeting all kinds of kooky characters along the way, like a guy, and a girl, and a guy, and a baby. If you haven't noticed already, our goal here never really changes all that much. We learn more about how the situation came to be, and of course you can decide to save or kill both the little sisters and a new group of people we'll get to later, but the goal stays the same. We need to save our daughter. This is a huge change from the first game, where we came to learn that we were a huge part of the plot, and that we were the ace in the hole for a war that caused the suffering we see in the first place. Here, Johnny doesn't have much of a grand role, outside of the fact that he was the first Big Daddy to be bonded to a little sister. And even then, that is only to explain why we as Johnny need to save Eleanor in the first place, because the earlier Big Daddies only got bonded with one little sister, and they were programmed in such a way that they would die without that one little sister. Outside of that little nugget, this is just a really personal story exploring the unique relationship the Big Daddies and little sisters share. We'll put a pin in that, however. Let's get to talking about this game's biggest strength, and sometimes its weakness, the characters. And themes of collectivism, I suppose. So let's start off with the big bad of this game, Sophia Lamb. She took over Rapture after Ryan died to make everyone believe her totally cool idea of popping Eleanor, her daughter, full with Adam until maybe something happens that could save Rapture. I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant Eleanor is the savior and she will be reborn. If you couldn't tell, this game is critiquing collectivism here, instead of the previous game being about the exact opposite. I think that's a really smart idea, honestly, because it'd only be natural that people look to different ideals and philosophies when they see the direct downfall of another one. Lamb, before she took over, held debates with Ryan and offered free therapy to the poor, who were kind of sick of being poor, as you do. So, of course, they loved her and her ideals. A character that I think exemplifies this the best is Grace. Grace is one of the 3 new characters you can either spare or kill. Not only did she feel incredibly pissed on seeing what a piece of fuck the city was after leaving her folks in St. Louis, but her husband James tragically died trying to revolt against Ryan, with her never being able to start a family now. Lamb was someone who cared and gave something back to the people, which is why so many people flocked to her. But more importantly for Grace, Lamb provided a family that she had longed for, which is why when Grace was entrusted to look after Eleanor, she was devastated to not only find her gone, but see her turned into a monster next to a freak of nature that knocked her back and broke her jaw. In her mind, you were responsible for letting the only person who still cared about her, Lamb, down. Of course she would hate you. Do you affirm that view she has of you, or do you prove her wrong? Will you be a pacifist, or will you use your Fuck. Grace as a character really shows how Lamb was able to grow to do her terrible mom shenanigans, because what else do the people who still live in Rapture even have? Not even the people who actually built the city are alive anymore. Of course they would immediately believe that there's a chance their suffering will be over, and that they'll be reborn from the deep. It's how lots of people get roped into joining bad collectivist ideals. Wow.
This is all real cool and shit, but I thought you were conflicted. Kind sounds like clickbait.
Unlike you, I like to look at the positives first. Okay, so all that stuff is good and all, but Sophia isn't really that interesting. She serves the plot greatly, but unlike Ryan, we don't get nearly as much insight into what led her down this path. Don't get me wrong, she's great. However, she really only achieves that thanks to what happens around her. Also, while the game really tries, it can't escape the limitations of its setting. Like I said earlier, Rapture was built with objectivism in mind, so trying to build new commentary on a different philosophy while the old one is still very much present can kinda clash at points. Wait, I've talked about the villain equivalent for this game for a bit now and their ideals, so who are the helpers this time? Well, there's Tenenbaum, who shows up for 5 seconds, whose motivation sucks. It's literally just the motivation she had in the first game. Again, it's honestly the only thing in this game I would call genuinely lazy, especially considering she shows up in Minerva's den and her motivations there are way more compelling. But at least her rehashed purpose led to that awesome side story featuring Mark Meltzer looking for his daughter. And then there's Sinclair, who I'm the most mixed on. I can't deny that he's an incredibly charming presence. However, Atlas was better for a couple reasons. You see, before the big reveal, we were genuinely emotionally invested in Atlas and his struggle because of his family. And when his family blowed up, we felt horrible and wanted to kill Ryan just as much as him. We were actually emotionally invested. In contrast, we never really get to know Sinclair at all, unless you go through audio diaries. And even then, the farthest that lore gets is he got Lamb imprisoned, explaining why they would have beef, and also something later which he actually tells you, but outside of that, he just be a nice dude with an extremely vague goal of getting back to the surface with a crap ton of money. Which is fine, I guess, though I would have liked something more. Like, I don't know, have him talk about his personal life.
Hi, I'm Bean Claire, and I'm a bean bitch. I like to go to the bookstores, and I like to eat recycling and shit. You know, I'm all about eating recycling. I like eating garbage too, but I like eating recycling. I recycle. I'm good for the environment. I am the environment. I am the environment as a person. You know, I am so environmental. I am the letter N.
And hey, since I mentioned Grace, what about the other two characters? Well, I'll save my thoughts on Alexander when we get to his brilliant level. As for the trash human being I was talking about earlier, Stanley. In all honesty, I don't have much to say about him since I believe he's too obviously in the wrong. Like, this is the only one save or kill encounter where Eleanor herself talks to you and is like, yo, this guy did all this stuff to you and me. I can also conveniently access this info with my vague atom powers. Later, Dad. Come on, game. You could have told me naturally with audio logs. That way it doesn't feel like the game is beating me over the head with info, and I get the feeling that killing him is actually my own decision. The only reason I could see someone having for not killing him is just because they feel bad for him thanks to how unbelievably pathetic he is. He might as well be an actual pool because he stays still the entire time we do his dirty work. In short,
Stanley was fat and ugly and really, really stupid.
Can you believe that this game is, in fact, more Bioshock? Yeah, in terms of core gameplay, nothing's changed. Even though you're a Big Daddy, you still have the exact same powers and are just as mobile as Jack was. Story-wise, it all makes sense, but naturally it does feel like a bit of a missed opportunity. Sure, there are more weapons, with the standout being the drill, which actually does make you feel like a Big Daddy. Also, the hacking minigame is a QuickTime event now, as opposed to Mario and Donkey Kong minis on the move. But the biggest highlight for me is dual wielding weapons. That just makes the gameplay far more smooth. But outside of that, business as usual. And listen, I can definitely see how they could have added more in this regard.
But I don't care. Tell Pokemon. Fuck you.
You see, while the running and gunning might be the same, the experience around that is also important. The enemies sadly don't fare much better in this regard, with the only new splicer type being these amazing bulk-looking motherfuckers.
Hell is that? Well, it ain't Barney the purple dinosaur.
which strayed just a bit too far from the more human look the normal splicers had for my taste. Of course, the obvious standout in the new enemies department are the new Big Daddies and Big Sisters. Which leads me to probably the biggest change gameplay-wise, how the little sisters work. In the first game, you could either save or kill a little sister. If you save them, you get less Adam, but you're a good little woke SJW. If you kill them, you get all the Adam you would ever need to spend on whatever dumb new ability came next.
And don't y'all let your cousins?
I'm gonna pincushion this guy.
However, saving them was always the better choice, because in terms of Adam, the total amount would never be too far off from if you were killing, and because Tenenbaum would send you presents that not only consisted of Adam, but other rewards too, so there wasn't much of a dilemma at all. I've heard conflicting things regarding how this came to be. Some say that 2K were the ones that requested the feature be implemented in the first place, explaining why it feels slightly tacked on, while others say that 2K only requested for the sparing route to not be as difficult out of a fear of controversy. I could look up what actually happened to verify these claims, but it's 10 p.m. for me while writing this though, so maybe in another life. Either way, now they fixed it. While the amount of Adam you get remains the same, you have to actually put in extra work to even get halfway decent amount this time. You can just rescue the little sister straight away without having to do the Adam gathering and little sister protectoring, but that gets you almost nothing, so don't bother. This is something this game does better than the first. If the little sister protectoring I mentioned earlier was actually fun, which, sorry to say, I don't think it is. It's just way too repetitive, and they could have shaken it up way more throughout the campaign. Why they thought having these sections be the basis for an entire DLC was a good idea is beyond me. That, however, is just a personal gripe. What's objectively bullshit is that a big sister can spawn right after you already blew your ammo on that horde of splicers, meaning your death is certain, like
Real life.
Spaghetti!
All those reasons combined is why in my playthrough I just started killing mindlessly. You see, there's another game with multiple routes to go on based on whether you kill or spare, and it's called
Sans. Number 3 is Sans.
In that game, it's the killing route that's extremely dull and repetitive. However, in Sans, it has a point. The game is actively trying to make you numb to killing and using your fists. Here, I really don't see what the game is getting at with making these sections so lame. That being a good person is hard and requires doing shitty things for the people you love? I sold my soul and came from hell. Do you think I care? No, really though, if that was their goal with this, then why make a DLC? Okay, so the game doesn't innovate, and when it does, it's flawed. Right? No. So you know this funny thing called level design? Well, it's no surprise that the guy who designed one of the most memorable levels from the first game, and the guy who was part of the Zoo Tycoon 2 production team, would create some absolute trash. So the first game had pretty set linear design. Look at Medical Pavilion. You just go forward mostly. I'm aware that's the opening level of the game, but admittedly the rest of the game, except for Fort Frolic, that's important, follow this design. In this game, they decided to go apeshit and just give every level a ton of incredibly detailed paths that loop back to where you were, and that makes exploring based as hell. Admittedly, in some levels, they don't loop and you basically just have to backtrack, which you would think is bad. However, the game makes sure your path back when you are backtracking stays interesting. Like, for example, flooding the whole place. All of this leads to the levels feeling incredibly immersive, and the way this game adds to the first game conceptually is also genius. Of course there would be a Ryan amusement park selling kids on his ideals. Of course there would be a shanty town. Of course there would be a church and a park dedicated or made by Lamb. Of course there would be a psychiatric hospital with a prison in it. They came up with so many new ideas that added to the world so incredibly naturally. They barely relied on the first game for the level ideas. I guess maybe exploring Fontaine Futuristics is a bit fan servicey, but that's the best level in the game. It seriously baffles me that even though this is a level that should be incredibly pandering and not really flow well with the rest of the game's original ideas, it somehow manages to be one of the most important and fun levels in the entire franchise. Story-wise, it's important because of Alex the Great, the best character in this game, no questions asked. Not only is his antagonistic fetus form incredibly entertaining, with him being insane, all while you can barely make out what he says because it sounds like he's having a stroke, but also just conceptually he's genius. He used to be a researcher at Fontaine Futuristic, with him being the one responsible for the pair bond you and Eleanor have. It ended up being a complete failure because it worked too well.
Today I saw one kneeling near a gatherer's garden and crying.
What babies. However, he felt genuine remorse over this and wanted to make it up to Lamb, allowing himself to become the first Utopian, which turned him into a screaming baby, and Lamb ultimately just abandoned him. Now Gilbert is trying to have his new mentally deranged self killed by whoever is willing to assist him in the future, and that's compelling as shit, boy. Mostly because the level not only showcases what could happen to Eleanor, but to you as well. Because yeah, you fight Alpha Series Big Daddies in this level for the first time, with Sinclair perfectly describing how fucked their situation is, and how if you don't save Eleanor, you will receive the same fate. It really helps you be even more motivated to go save your daughter. If there's one thing I'm willing to criticize here, is that I think it's a bit dumb that we fight so many alphas, yet we're supposed to believe they're a rare Big Daddy type. Not to mention that after a certain point, fighting them stops being interesting. Oh well, at least the stuff around them is cool. Like that part where Alex replicates how you were shown off to the public of Rapture with a little stage performance. Best part of the level, by the way. Or that part where you go into this incredibly fucked up layer. I could gush about this level for ages, honestly. And I had to replay it twice because I got stuck on a wall and couldn't move my character around, so I lost like an hour of progress. So you know I like it a lot. Levels like these make me baffled that people think Bioshock 2 didn't innovate. It did, just not gameplay-wise. And even then, they made some huge improvements there. In fact, since we're talking about improvements, how about we talked about the most improved part of Bioshock 2 compared to 1? The end game.
Somewhere beyond the sea, somewhere watching for me.
The first game's end was, it was decent, but it was obvious they were really stretching for ideas after the huge twist happened. It was kind of like how Half-Life 1, an FPS set in a rundown laboratory with normal controls, ended with a Mario Galaxy level. Also, what is this footage playing?
I'm gonna fucking kill you!
Though with Bioshock 1, the issue is more so that the twist is the climax. After the big twist happens, the game has already said what it wanted to say. The only real reason the game keeps going is because they obviously couldn't end it at Fontaine takes over, and that's all, folks. Here, it concludes far more naturally. The benefits of a more simple story, I suppose. Once you finally find Eleanor in her room after a pretty tough boss fight against two big sisters, Lamb reveals that Eleanor revived us. That she wanted a father. And with her ability to see through the little sister's eyes, she has seen every action you took. Now, Lamb reveals how she truly sees her daughter. Nothing more than her life's work, which is supposed to follow in her footsteps. Which, because we were forced to bond with her, and because she wanted a father again, that somehow means that it's our fault we ruined Eleanor. Oh, and then she reveals how if Eleanor's heart stops, even once, we would die, which she demonstrates by pulling a reverse Joker. What the...
His body is shutting down now, naturally. But if he dies of trauma, he will return elsewhere. Full restraints at all times. No one enters this room until he expires.
Father, it's me, Eleanor. I'm so sorry. Mother stopped my heart long enough to sever our bond. Staying near me won't stop you from dying now. Or worse. But I can still help you escape. This little sister's brought you something that will allow you to take control of her.
Yeah, this bit rocks. It not only services the story, since Eleanor seeing through the eyes of a little sister is a big plot point, yet it also makes the little sisters way more sympathetic. Knowing how little of an idea they have regarding the world they actually inhabit, only ever getting brief glimpses. Sure, gameplay-wise, it's just a walking sim, but it's very well paced, so it ain't too long before you're back to normal gameplay. And after you, as a little sister, gather a big sister suit, she friggin' rescues you and helps you out during combat. Finally, a damsel in distress that's helpful. Now go to the comments to tell me how there's a lot of examples of this so that I can farm engagement and get this video to a more billion views. After Lamb ironically does the same thing as Ryan did in the first game, trying to bring down the city, you have to fight Sinclair. I'll admit, putting aside my issues with the character, it's really sad watching him suffer as hard as he does, yet somehow still seeing it as karma for renting you out way back when. Why is he an alpha series? I don't know. Combined with the fact that the prisoners you release by removing lockdown are also all alpha series, I'd wager they were running out of time and money. Like, come on game, this is just excessive at this point. After an incredibly tense and maybe a little drawn out escape, we finally get to— oh! This ending is incredible. And I'm talking every ending. You see, in the first game, the good ending is really the only one that matters and that feels at all conclusive. The bad ending in the first game is batshit crazy. It starts out okay with Jack taking over Rapture, but then it pulls a Summer Wars 2009 and just goes to nuclear warfare. Like, what? I've come to enjoy that ending, ironically, but you know, this is a pretty serious game, so I don't know if that's a good thing. Now, not only have the endings doubled, but they actually add to the themes of the game. It's genius, and really brings the themes of parenthood home, and actually makes you reflect on what you did to influence her, and makes it feel like your choices mattered. What a great story. My verdict is that, while not surpassing the original by any means, the second game managed to exceed it in quite a few areas, and overall succeed as a sequel, especially given the time and circumstances around its development. Now you might ask, what about Minerva's Den? And to that I say, If you want to know, smash that like and subscribe button, and maybe I'll cover it in a future video, you Biden. Also, this game had online multiplayer. I haven't played it, sorry. It sort of strikes me as something they added for brand appeal, not because it would be good or because it fit the series. I'm sure it was the next CSGO, guys, but it can CSGO away if you ask me. Oh, God. The pun was so shit. I'm dying of cringe.
Oh no, my friend, I guess, is dying. I will save him with the power of video editing.
Thank you, Rob. You really are one dynamite guy. I still fucking hate you.